The air in the massive council chamber felt heavy with fear. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat in their floating chairs, their strange faces showing worry and panic. Some had multiple eyes that blinked rapidly. Others had skin that changed colors when they were scared. All of them were afraid. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center of the room. His tall, thin body shook as he spoke into the translation device. His people, the Zilithians, had ruled 17 star systems for over 2,000 years. Now they were dying. "The Vorthans have taken everything," Kethvar said, his voice breaking. "They came from the dark space between galaxies like a disease. They eat our worlds and leave nothing behind. Our children are gone, our cities are ash, our fleets are destroyed." The other aliens shifted in their seats. They had all heard the reports. The Vorthan Collective was unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever seen. They were not just another warlike species. They were something much worse. General Vexnall of the hegemony leaned forward. His forearms crossed over his chest. "How many ships do you have left?" 47, Kethvar answered. "We started with over 3,000. A sound like wind through metal came from the Altarian representative. It was how her people showed sadness. "We sent our best energy weapons to help you. The Vorthans absorbed the power and used it against your own ships." "Our quantum bombs did nothing?" added the delegate from the Nexus Federation. His voice sounded like grinding stone. "They adapted to our technology in minutes. What took us centuries to develop, they learned in a single battle." Elder Thyses spoke from her position at the high table. She was older than anyone in the room, maybe older than their entire civilizations. Her species had been watching the galaxy for millions of years. "The Vorthans are not like us. They do not think as individuals. They are one mind controlling billions of bodies. When they learn something, they all learn it instantly." "Then how do we fight them?" asked the Krathan representative. His people were warriors, but even they had run away from the Vorthans. "We have tried everything. Energy weapons, projectile weapons, biological weapons, even reality warping technology. Nothing works." The room fell silent. Outside the great windows, they could see the stars. Some of those stars used to have planets around them. Now they were just empty points of light. The Vorthans had been there. "There is one option we have not tried," Elder Thyses said slowly. "The humans of Earth." The silence in the room became even deeper. Then several aliens started talking at once. "Humans?" General Vexnall laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "They are primitives. They still use chemical rockets and metal bullets. They have not even learned to control their own planet's weather. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours," agreed the Altarian. "What could they possibly do that we cannot?" Elder Thyses raised one of her many arms. The room became quiet again. "I have studied the humans for their entire history. They are different from us in ways that matter." "Different how?" asked Kethvar. He was desperate enough to listen to anything. "We have all become civilized over millions of years," Elder Thyses explained. "We fight wars with rules. We try to minimize damage. We seek to control territory and resources. We think about the future and try to preserve what we can." "That is what civilized beings do," said the Nexus representative. "Yes," Elder Thyses agreed. "But the humans have not forgotten how to be uncivilized. They have a concept they call total war. When they are threatened with extinction, they throw away all rules. They will destroy everything, including themselves, to defeat their enemy." The aliens looked at each other with confusion. This did not sound like a good thing. "I have watched them fight wars against each other," Elder Thyses continued. "In their Second World War, they created weapons that could destroy entire cities. They used them. When their enemies hid in caves, they filled the caves with fire. When their enemies used civilians as shields, they found ways to fight anyway." "That sounds horrible," whispered the Altarian. "It is horrible," Elder Thyses agreed, "but it is also effective. The humans have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. They understand that sometimes you must become a monster to defeat." "Monsters," Kethvar looked at the holographic display showing the Vorthan advance. Red dots marked conquered systems. The red was spreading like blood through the galaxy. At the current rate, the Vorthans would reach the core worlds in 6 months. What makes you think they would help us? He asked. Because they are not stupid, Elder Thyses said. They will understand that if the Vorthans consume our galaxy, Earth will be next. And humans do not like to wait for their enemies to come to them. They prefer to fight wars in other people's territory. The debate went on for hours. Some aliens thought it was foolish to ask primitives for help. Others thought it was their only choice. The Zilithians were dying while they argued. Finally, a vote was called. The decision had to be unanimous according to council rules. One by one, the representatives raised their hands, arms, tentacles, or other appendages. Even General Vexnall voted yes, though he did not look happy about it. The message was prepared carefully. They could not sound too desperate, or the humans might ask for too much in return. They could not sound too confident, or the humans might not understand how serious the situation was. People of Earth, the message began. We are the Galactic Council, representing the civilized species of this galaxy. We face an enemy that threatens all life. We have exhausted our conventional military options. We request your assistance in exchange for technology, resources, and full membership in Galactic Civilization. The message was sent through the quantum communication network. It would reach Earth in 3 days. Elder Thyses remained in the chamber after the others left. She looked out at the stars and thought about what they had just done. The humans were dangerous in ways the other species did not understand. They had never lost a war when their survival was at stake. But they had also never fought an enemy like the Vorthans. What have we done? She whispered to herself. 3 days later, the reply came back from Earth. It was much shorter than expected. We understand the situation. We will send help. Prepare to receive our ships in 30 days, that was all. No negotiations, no demands for payment, no questions about the enemy's capabilities. Just a simple promise to help. The Galactic Council was confused. They had expected the humans to ask for detailed information, to demand guarantees, to negotiate for better terms. Instead, they had simply agreed to help. Elder Thyses was not confused. She knew the humans better than anyone. They had made their decision the moment they read the message. Everything else was just details. The Vorthans had destroyed 47 civilizations. They had adapted to every known form of warfare. They had never been defeated, but they had never fought humans before. In 30 days, they would learn the difference between civilized war and total war. They would discover what happened when a species that had spent its entire history fighting itself turned its attention to an outside enemy. The galaxy was about to change forever. And it had all started with a simple cry for help from a dying species that had nowhere else to turn. The humans were coming. The red phone rang at exactly 3 in the morning. President Rebecca Stone woke up instantly. The red phone only rang when the world was about to end or change forever. She picked it up before the second ring. This is the president. Ma'am, we have a situation. You need to come to the Pentagon immediately. We've received a message from space. 30 minutes later, President Stone sat in the deepest room under the Pentagon. Around the table were the most powerful people in the American military. Admiral Jack Morrison looked tired, but alert. General Lisa Hayes had her laptop open, reading reports that made her frown. Director of the CIA, Colonel Amy Turner, stared at a holographic display that showed star maps. Tell me everything, the president said. Admiral Morrison pressed a button. A blue alien face appeared on the screen. The alien had large eyes and spoke in a voice that sounded like music. This is the message we received 12 hours ago, Morrison sighed. It's from something called the Galactic Council. They represent 12 different alien species. They're asking for our help. The president listened to the entire message. When it ended, she sat back in her chair. Are we sure this is real? We've verified it through every method we have, said General Hayes. The transmission came from A point in space beyond our solar system? The technology used to send it is far beyond anything we can create. Either this is real, or someone has technology so advanced they could destroy us without asking for help. What do we know about these Vorthons? The president asked. Colonel Turner stood up. We've been analyzing the data they sent along with the message. The Vorthons are unlike anything we've ever heard of. They're not just another species. They're a collective consciousness that spreads like a virus across the galaxy. She pressed a button and the star map changed. Red dots appeared across dozens of star systems. Each red dot represents a civilization the Vorthons have completely destroyed, not conquered. Destroyed. They consume everything on the planet and then move on? No survivors? No negotiations? No mercy. How many civilizations have they destroyed? Asked the president. 47 confirmed, but the aliens think there might be more. The Vorthons have been spreading for over 100 years. They're getting stronger and faster with each world they consume. Admiral Morrison leaned forward. The aliens have tried everything. Energy weapons that can crack planets. Shields that can stop anything. Fleets with thousands of ships. Nothing works. The Vorthons adapt to every attack and use it against their enemies. So why do they think we can help? The president asked. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Colonel Turner spoke. Because we're primitive. Because we don't fight the way civilized species fight. Because we do things that advanced aliens would never consider. What kind of things? Total war, Turner said simply. When we fight, we don't just fight armies. We fight entire nations. We destroy supply lines. We target leaders. We use psychological warfare. We do whatever it takes to win. General Hayes pulled up another display. The aliens fight like gentlemen. They have rules. They try to minimize civilian casualties. They fight for territory and resources. They think about preserving their culture and their way of life. We fight to survive, Admiral Morrison added. When our backs are against the wall, we don't care about rules. We care about winning. The president studied the faces around the table. These were people who had dedicated their lives to protecting America. Now they were talking about protecting the entire galaxy. What are you recommending? Colonel Turner opened a thick folder. We've been working on something called the Reaper Protocol. It's a plan for fighting an enemy that's technologically superior but has never encountered human warfare tactics. Explain. We take volunteers from our best Special Forces units. Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marine Raiders, Delta Force, Green Berets. We train them to use alien technology. Then we send them to fight the war our way. Admiral Morrison nodded. The aliens expect us to send fleets to fight their fleets. Instead, we send soldiers to fight their soldiers. We don't attack their ships. We attack them. How many men are we talking about? The president asked. 3,000, Turner replied. All volunteers, all the best we have. The president was quiet for a long time. She thought about the weight of the decision. If they said no, the galaxy might fall to the Vorthons. Eventually, the Vorthons would come to Earth. If they said yes, they were sending 3,000 Americans to die in a war that wasn't theirs. What are the chances of success? She asked. Unknown, Admiral Morrison said honestly. We've never fought anything like this before, but we have advantages. We think differently. We fight differently. We're willing to do things that other species won't do, such as? General Hayes pulled up a tactical display, boarding actions. Instead of fighting ship to ship, we put soldiers inside their ships. Sabotage. We don't just attack their weapons. We attack their ability to think and communicate. Psychological warfare. We make them afraid. Can aliens feel fear? Everything that's alive can feel fear, Turner said. The question is whether we can find what scares them. The president stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of Washington. Millions of people were sleeping, not knowing that their world had just changed forever. If we do this, what do we get in return? Everything, Admiral Morrison said. Technology that will advance our civilization by 1,000 years, faster than light travel, energy weapons, medical advances that could cure every disease. access to the galactic community, and if we fail, then we die fighting instead of waiting to die, Turner said. At least we'll go down swinging. The president turned back to the table. I want to talk to the volunteers. I want to look them in the eye and tell them what we're asking them to. 2 days later, 3,000 soldiers stood in a hangar at Edwards Air Force Base. They came from every branch of the military. Some were young, barely out of training. Others were veterans with 20 years of experience. All of them had volunteered for a mission they knew almost nothing about. President Stone stood on a platform in front of them. She had decided to tell them the truth. Soldiers, she began, you volunteered for a classified mission. I'm going to tell you what that mission is. We have been contacted by alien civilizations. They are facing extinction from an enemy that has never been defeated. They have asked for our help. A murmur went through the crowd, but no one spoke. The enemy is called the Vorthan Collective. They have destroyed 47 civilizations. They adapt to every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. They cannot be negotiated with. They cannot be reasoned with. They exist only to consume and destroy. The president paused, looking at the faces in front of her. The aliens have given us technology that will make you more dangerous than any soldiers in history. But you will be fighting in space on alien worlds against an enemy that has never lost a battle. The chances of survival are low. The chances of success are unknown. She took a deep breath. If any of you want to leave, you can walk out now. No questions asked. No consequences. You signed up to protect America, not to save the galaxy. Not one soldier moved. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why are you willing to die for people you've never met, on worlds you've never seen? A sergeant in the front row raised his hand. Because if we don't fight them there, we'll have to fight them here. And I'd rather die fighting than live on. My knees, other soldiers nodded. They understood what was at stake. Very well, the president said. You have 30 days to train with alien technology. Then you ship out to save the galaxy. God help you all. The soldiers began their training. The next day, they learned to use weapons that fired energy instead of bullets. They learned to wear armor that could stop attacks from space. They learned to fight in zero gravity and on worlds with different air. But most importantly, they learned to think. Like humans in a galaxy that had forgotten how to be human. The countdown had begun. The human fleet appeared at the edge of the Zilithian system like shadows coming out of a nightmare. 27 ships materialized from faster-than-light travel, their dark hulls reflecting the distant stars. They were smaller than the massive alien warships, but something about them felt dangerous. Captain Ryan Stone stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, watching the tactical display. The ship hummed with alien technology that his engineers had spent weeks learning to use. Energy. Shields protected the hull. Weapons that could punch through solid metal were mounted on every surface. But the most important weapons were the 300 soldiers sleeping in the ship's cargo bay. Sir, we're getting a good look at the enemy, reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Brown from her station. The Vorthan blockade has 43 ships surrounding the planet. Each ship is about twice the size of ours? Stone nodded. The Vorthans had been busy. Their biomechanical ships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They pulsed with organic energy and moved through space, like living creatures. No, 2 ships looked exactly the same, but they all had the same purpose, to consume everything on the planet below. Any word from the Zilithian command? Stone asked. They're transmitting on multiple frequencies, Brown replied. They want to know our battle plan? They're asking how many ships we have. They want to coordinate fleet movements. Stone's executive officer, Commander Bill Davis, looked up from his own display. They're thinking like every other species in the galaxy. They expect us to line up our ships and fight ship to ship until someone wins. That's not happening, Stone said firmly. Signal the fleet, begin Phase 1. Across the human fleet, soldiers began waking up. They had been in stasis for the 3-week journey from Earth. Now they stretched and checked their equipment with the calm, efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Sergeant Major Luke Garcia led his squad of 12 through their pre-mission routine. Each soldier wore armor that combined human engineering with alien technology. The suits could survive in space, stop energy weapons, and enhance their strength and speed. But the most important part was still the human inside. "Remember what we learned in training," Garcia said to his team. "The Vorthans think as one mind. They share information instantly. They adapt to threats quickly. But they've never fought humans before." Corporal Jenny Walsh finished checking her plasma rifle. "What makes us different, Sergeant?" "We're unpredictable," Garcia replied. "Every other species in the galaxy fights logically. They make plans and stick to them. We make plans and then throw them away when something better comes along." The squad laughed quietly. They had all seen the tactical briefings. The Vorthans had defeated every enemy by learning their patterns and adapting to them. But you couldn't adapt to an enemy that never used the same pattern twice. 5 minutes to deployment, came the announcement over the ship's speakers. Garcia looked at his soldiers. They were young, most of them. Some had never seen combat before volunteering for this mission. But they all had the same look in their eyes, the look of people who would rather die fighting than live in fear. "Listen up," he said. "We're about to do something that's never been done before. We're going to board enemy ships in the middle of a battle. We're going to fight aliens in their own territory. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The soldiers nodded. They were ready on the bridge of the Vengeance. Captain Stone watched the Vorthan fleet begin to move. The alien ships were turning to face the human fleet, their weapons charging with deadly energy. "Sir, the Vorthans are forming a battle line," reported Lieutenant Commander Brown. "They're preparing for conventional fleet combat." "Perfect," Stone said. "That's exactly what we want them to think we're doing. Signal all ships. Execute Protocol Chaos." The human fleet began to move in a pattern that made no sense to the watching aliens. Instead of forming a battle line, the ships scattered in different directions. Some headed straight for the Vorthan fleet. Others moved toward the planet. A few seemed to be running away. The Vorthans were confused. This wasn't how space battles worked. Fleets were supposed to face each other and exchange fire until one side was destroyed. These humans were acting like they didn't understand the rules of war. "The Vorthans are trying to adapt their formation," Davis reported. "They're splitting their fleet to follow our ships." "Good," Stone said. "Now we have them spread out. Begin Phase 2. Across the human fleet, soldiers were climbing into small attack pods. These pods were designed to be launched from the larger ships and to penetrate enemy hulls. They were fast, stealthy, and packed with enough firepower to punch through alien armor. Sergeant Garcia felt his pod launch from the Vengeance. Through the small window, he could see the massive bulk of a Vorthan ship growing larger. The ship's surface was covered with organic-looking growths that pulsed with energy. It looked alive. 30 seconds to impact," announced the pod's computer. Garcia gripped his rifle tighter. The plan was simple. Get inside the enemy ship, find the command center, and cause as much damage as possible before the Vorthans could adapt. Simple, but not easy. The pod hit the Vorthan ship's hull with a sound like thunder. Explosive charges blew a hole in the alien metal. Garcia and his squad poured through the breach into the ship's interior. The inside of the Vorthan ship was like being inside a giant animal. The walls were covered with veins that pulsed with glowing fluid. The air was thick and humid. Strange sounds echoed from deeper in the ship. "Spread out," Garcia ordered. "Find the neural relay nodes. Those are what connect this ship to the Vorthan. Collective." The soldiers moved through the organic corridors with practiced efficiency. They had studied the layout of Vorthan ships during their training. The neural relay nodes were always in the same places, connected to the ship's main power systems. Corporal Walsh spotted the first node. It was a pulsing mass of biomechanical tissue that glowed with electric energy. "Target acquired," she whispered into her radio. "Take the shot," Garcia replied. The plasma rifle fired with a bright flash. The neural node exploded in a shower of sparks and organic fluid. Throughout the ship, Vorthan drones stumbled as their connection to the collective was disrupted. Node destroyed, Walsh reported. The aliens are looking confused. That's the point, Garcia said. Move to the next target. Similar scenes were playing out on dozens of Vorthan ships. Human soldiers were appearing inside enemy vessels using alien teleportation technology to bypass shields and armor. They struck fast, destroyed key systems, and disappeared before the Vorthans could respond. The Vorthan collective had never encountered this kind of warfare. They were used to fighting other fleets in space, not soldiers inside their own ships. Their greatest strength, the shared consciousness that let them coordinate perfectly, became a weakness when humans started cutting the connections between ships on the bridge of the Vengeance. Captain Stone watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Vorthan fleet was beginning to break apart. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination were now acting independently, their connections to the collective severed. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Zilithian Command," reported Lieutenant Commander Brown. "They're asking what we're doing. They say they've never seen tactics like this." Stone smiled. "Tell them we're fighting a war, the human way." "The Vorthans are trying to adapt," Davis observed. "They're sending security forces to hunt our boarding parties." "Then it's time for Phase 3, Stone said. "Signal all ships. Implement random attack patterns." No plan lasts longer than 30 minutes. The human fleet began a series of attacks that followed no logical pattern. Ships would engage the enemy for a few minutes, then break off and attack from a different angle. Boarding parties would strike one target, then immediately move to another. The Vorthan's ability to learn and adapt became useless against an enemy that refused to follow any consistent strategy. Inside the Vorthan ships, human soldiers were learning to fight in an environment unlike anything they had ever experienced. The organic corridors shifted and changed. The air was filled with gases that would have killed them without their armor. Alien creatures that looked like cross between spiders and machines hunted them through the twisting passages, but the humans adapted faster than their enemies. They used the ship's own organic systems against it, planting explosives in the pulsing veins that carried power and information. They turned the Vorthan's living ships into their own weapons. The battle for the Zilithian system had begun. And for the first time in over a century, the Vorthans were losing. The Vorthan collective had conquered 47 civilizations across 12 galaxies. They had adapted to plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, reality-warping weapons, and psychic attacks. They had learned to counter every form of warfare known to galactic civilization. But they had never encountered an enemy that refused to be logical. Master Sergeant Dan Parker crept through the twisted corridors of Vorthan bioship Delta 7. His squad of 8 soldiers moved behind him like shadows. The ship's organic walls pulsed with alien heartbeats. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. The air tasted like metal and decay. "Sergeant, I've got movement ahead," whispered Private Lisa Grant through her helmet radio. 3 Vorthan drones, maybe 4, Parker held up his fist. The squad stopped. Moving. Through his helmet display, he could see the heat signatures of the alien creatures. The Vorthans looked like humans crossed with insects. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces that might have been human once. But their skin was gray and metallic. Their eyes glowed with electric blue light. "They're guarding the secondary neural hub," Parker said quietly. "Walsh, you go left. Davis, take the right corridor. Everyone else, straight through the middle." On my mark, the soldiers moved into position. They had trained for this exact situation hundreds of times on Earth. The Vorthans were individually weak, but they shared information instantly through their collective consciousness. If one drone saw an enemy, they all knew about it within seconds. "Mark," Parker whispered. The attack lasted 15 seconds. Plasma rifles fired with bright flashes. The Vorthan drones fell before they could send a warning to their collective. Their metallic bodies sparked and went dark. "Target eliminated," reported Corporal Jenny Walsh. "But I'm picking up more movement," They know we're here. Parker nodded. The Vorthons were learning. Each time humans attacked a ship, the collective adapted their defenses. But humans were learning too, and humans learned faster. Change of plans, Parker said. We're not going to the neural hub. We're going to the power core. Sergeant, that's not the mission, Private Grant said. The mission is to cause maximum damage, Parker replied. The neural hub controls communications. The power core controls everything else. Which do you think hurts them more? The squad moved. Deeper into the ship, the corridors became narrower and more twisted. The organic walls began to move on their own, trying to trap the humans inside. But the soldiers had studied Vorthon bioship anatomy. They knew how to navigate the living vessels on the bridge of the USS Vengeance. Captain Ryan Stone watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The human fleet had been fighting for 6 hours. Several Vorthon ships were dead in space, their power cores destroyed by boarding parties. Others were firing wildly in all directions, their targeting systems damaged by sabotage. Sir, the Vorthons are trying something new, reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Brown. They're pulling their ships back into a defensive formation. Stone studied the display. The Vorthon fleet was forming a tight circle around the largest bioship. They were trying to protect their command vessel by using the other ships as shields. Interesting, Stone said. They're adapting to our boarding tactics by making it harder for us to reach their most important ship. Commander Bill Davis looked up from his station. Should we change our strategy? No, Stone said. We should change theirs. He activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Vengeance Actual. The enemy has formed a defensive perimeter. They think we're going to try to break through to their command ship. Instead, we're going to make them come to us. Initiate protocol panic. Across the human fleet, ships began implementing a tactic that no galactic military had ever used. Instead of attacking the Vorthon formation, they began attacking empty space. Around it, gravity mines created artificial asteroid fields. Metallic chaff clouds interfered with the aliens' bioelectric coordination. Energy-dampening fields made it impossible for the Vorthons to maintain their defensive positions. The Vorthon collective was confused. The humans were not attacking their ships. They were attacking the space between their ships. This made no tactical sense. Fleets were supposed to fight other fleets, not empty vacuum, but the result was effective. The Vorthon ships began to drift apart as their formation collapsed. The artificial gravity fields pulled them in different directions. The chaff clouds blocked their ability to coordinate movements. The defensive perimeter fell apart. Sir, the Vorthon command ship is exposed, reported Brown. Launch all remaining boarding pods, Stone ordered. Target the command vessel. Let's end this. Deep inside Vorthon bioship Delta 7, Sergeant Parker's squad had reached the power core. The chamber was massive, filled with pulsing organic machinery that looked like a giant heart made of metal and flesh. Electrical energy flowed through thick cables that connected to every part of the ship. Plant the charges here, here, and here, Parker instructed, pointing to key junction points. When this goes up, it should take out their life support, propulsion, and weapon systems. The soldiers worked quickly. The explosive charges were designed to disrupt bioelectric systems. When they detonated, they would send feedback pulses through the ship's nervous system, killing it like a massive stroke. Charges set, reported Walsh. We've got company coming. Through the chamber's entrance, they could see Vorthon security. Drones approaching. These were different from the worker drones they had fought earlier. They were larger, more heavily armored, and carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. How long until the charges detonate? Asked Private Grant. 2 minutes, Parker replied. We need to hold this position for 2 minutes. The battle in the power core chamber was fierce. The Vorthons fought with mechanical precision, but the humans fought with creativity and desperation. When their plasma rifles ran low on energy, they used the ship's own systems as weapons. When the aliens tried to advance, the humans used the organic machinery as cover, Corporal Walsh discovered that shooting certain biomechanical nodes caused the ship's immune system to attack the Vorthan drones. Private Davis learned that power cables could be redirected to electrocute approaching enemies. The humans turned the Vorthan ship into their ally. 30 seconds, Parker announced. The Vorthan security drones pressed their attack. They seemed to understand that the humans were about to destroy something vital. Their weapons fired faster. Their movements became more aggressive. 10 seconds, Parker said. Everyone get down. The charges detonated simultaneously. The power core's bioelectric heart stopped beating. Electrical feedback raced through the ship's nervous system. Lights went out. The artificial gravity failed. The life support systems shut down. Throughout Bioship Delta 7. Vorthan drones collapsed as their connection to the collective was severed. The massive vessel began to drift through space, dead and powerless. Similar scenes were playing out across the Vorthan fleet. Human boarding parties had penetrated 18 ships. Some attacked power cores. Others destroyed weapon systems. A few targeted the biomechanical brains that controlled the vessels. The Vorthan collective had never experienced anything like this. They were used to fighting enemies that attacked from outside their ships. They had never faced soldiers who got inside their vessels and attacked them from within. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Vorthan command ship," reported Lieutenant Commander Brown. Captain Stone was surprised. "They want to talk?" "Yes, sir, they're requesting a ceasefire." Stone considered this. In 6 hours of fighting, his fleet had destroyed or disabled 21 Vorthan ships. But he had also lost 4 human vessels and over 200 soldiers. The survivors were tired, low on ammunition, and running out of time. "Put them through," Stone said. The alien voice that came through the speakers was different from the musical tones of the Galactic Council. It sounded like grinding metal and electrical static. "Human vessels," the Vorthan said. "We wish to understand your tactics. You do not fight as other species fight. You do not follow the accepted rules of warfare." "That's right," Stone replied. "We don't." "Why do you fight inside our ships instead of against our ships?" Stone smiled grimly. "Because that's where you are." There was a long pause. The Vorthan collective was trying to process this answer. They had adapted to every form of external warfare. But humans fought internally, attacking the mind and heart of their enemies instead of just the body. "You are unpredictable," the Vorthan finally said. "We cannot adapt to chaos." "Then you should leave," Stone said. "Go back to wherever you came from. Find enemies that fight the way you expect them to fight." Another pause. "We will consider this." The transmission ended. On the tactical display, Stone watched the remaining Vorthan ships begin to move away from the planet. They were retreating. For the first time in over a century, the Vorthan collective had been defeated. The battle for Zalith Prime was over. The Vorthan fleet had retreated into the darkness between stars, leaving behind 18 destroyed bioships and the wreckage of 4 human vessels. Captain Ryan Stone stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, watching the alien planet slowly rotate below them. Cities that had been dark for weeks were beginning to light up again. "Final casualty report, sir," Lieutenant Commander Kate Brown said quietly. She handed him a tablet with numbers that made his chest tight. 2,200 human soldiers are confirmed dead. Another 300 are missing, presumed. Dead. We have 800 survivors. Stone closed his eyes for a moment. 3,000 of Earth's best soldiers had volunteered for this mission. Only 800 were coming home. But those 800 had done something impossible. They had defeated an enemy that had never been defeated before. "Send a message to Earth," Stone said. "Tell them the mission is complete. The Vorthans have been stopped." "Yes, sir. What about the survivors?" Stone looked at the wounded soldiers being treated in the ship's medical bay. Many of them would never fight again. Some would never walk again, but they were alive, and they had saved an entire galaxy from extinction. "They're going home as heroes," he said. 3 days later, Admiral Jack Morrison stood before the Galactic Council. The great chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Word of the human victory had spread quickly through the galaxy. For the first time in over a century, there was hope. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zilithian spoke first. His tall, thin frame looked stronger than it had during the desperate plea for help. Admiral Morrison, on behalf of my people and all free civilizations in the galaxy, I thank you. You have given us something we thought was lost forever, a future. The other alien representatives murmured their agreement. The Altarians glowed brighter than usual, which was how they showed happiness. The Krathan warriors stood and saluted, in their traditional way. Even the proud representatives of the hegemony bowed their heads in respect. Elder Thizes rose from her ancient chair. Her compound eyes focused on Morrison with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You have done more than defeat the Vorthans, she said. You have changed the galaxy forever. How so? Morrison asked. For millions of years, galactic civilization has followed certain rules. We fight with honor. We try to minimize casualties. We seek to control territory and preserve culture. We thought this made us superior to primitive species. Elder Thizes paused, her ancient voice carrying across the silent chamber. You have shown us that honor means nothing to an enemy that wants to destroy everything you love. You have reminded us that sometimes survival requires us to become what we fear most. Morrison nodded slowly. The Vorthans will return. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but they will come back. When they do, they'll be ready for some of our tactics. What do you recommend? Asked General Vexnall of the hegemony. You need to learn to fight the way we fight, Morrison said. Not just with our weapons, but with our mindset. You need to be willing to do whatever it takes to win, even if it means giving up some of your civilization. The chamber fell silent. What Morrison was suggesting went against everything these species believed about themselves. They had spent millions of years evolving beyond the primitive need for total war. You're asking us to become barbarians, said the Altarian representative. I'm asking you to become survivors, Morrison replied. The choice is yours. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species wanted to adopt human military doctrine immediately. Others argued that becoming more primitive would destroy everything they had built. A few suggested that Earth should handle all future military threats while they focused on science and culture. Finally, Elder Thizes called for order. We will put this to a vote. But first, Admiral Morrison, what does Earth want in return for? Your help? Morrison had been expecting this question. He had discussed it with President Stone and the Joint Chiefs before leaving Earth. Their answer was simple. We want full membership in the galactic community, he said. Access to your technology, your knowledge, your trade networks. We want to be treated as equals, not as primitives who are useful only for fighting your wars. And if we refuse? Asked General Vexnall. Morrison's expression became cold. Then the next time the Vorthans attack, you can handle it yourselves. We didn't volunteer to become the galaxy's attack dogs. The vote was unanimous. Earth would receive full membership in the Galactic Council. Human technology would be upgraded with alien science. Human colonies would be established on suitable worlds throughout the galaxy. And in exchange, Earth would serve as the military backbone of galactic civilization. But the real changes began after the formal agreements were signed, within 6 months. Alien species throughout the galaxy started adopting human military tactics. The Krathan began training soldiers in boarding actions. The Altarians developed weapons designed to cause fear instead of just destruction. Even the peaceful Nexus Federation created special forces, units trained in sabotage and psychological warfare. The galaxy was learning to fight dirty. On Earth, the surviving soldiers of the Zelith Prime mission were welcomed as heroes. Parades were held in every major city. President Rebecca Stone gave each survivor a medal and a promise that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. But Master Sergeant Dan Parker, now confined to a wheelchair after taking shrapnel in the final battle, had mixed feelings about their victory. We won, he told the reporter interviewing him. But we changed something fundamental about galactic civilization. For millions of years, these species fought with honor and restraint. Now they're learning to fight like us. Is that a bad thing? The reporter asked. Parker looked out the window of the military hospital. In the distance, he could see construction crews building new facilities where human soldiers would train alien recruits in the art of total war. I don't know, he said honestly. We saved the galaxy from the Vorthons. But we also taught them that sometimes you have to become a monster to defeat monsters. The question is, what happens when there are no more monsters to fight? The answer came sooner than anyone expected, 2 years after the Battle of Silith Prime, the first interspecies conflict in galactic history broke out. The hegemony and the Krathan Dominion went to war over mining rights in a disputed system. But instead of the civilized fleet actions that had characterized galactic warfare for millions of years, both sides used human tactics. Krathan soldiers boarded hegemony ships and destroyed them from the inside. Hegemony forces used psychological warfare to drive Krathan crews insane. Both sides targeted civilian infrastructure and used terror as a weapon. The war lasted only 3 months, but it killed more beings than the previous 1,000 years of galactic conflicts combined. Elder Thises requested a private meeting with Admiral Morrison when he returned to the council chambers. We have created something terrible, she said. The galaxy is learning to fight like humans. But we don't have your restraint. We don't have your ethics. We're becoming efficient killers without the wisdom to know when to stop. Morrison sighed. He had feared this would happen. What do you want me to do about it? Help us learn not just how to fight, but when to fight. Teach us the difference between necessary war and pointless violence. That's not something you can teach in a classroom, Morrison said. That's something each species has to learn for themselves, through pain, through loss, through the kind of mistakes that nearly destroyed us. Elder Thises was quiet for a long time. Perhaps, she said finally, this is the price of survival. Perhaps becoming monsters is the only way to defeat monsters. Maybe, Morrison agreed. But the real test isn't whether you can become monsters. It's whether you can choose to stop being monsters when the war is over. The Vorthons had been defeated. The galaxy was safe. But humanity's greatest gift to galactic civilization might also prove to be its greatest curse. The age of civilized warfare was over. The age of total war had begun. And Earth, for better or worse, had lit the fire that would change everything.